Alright, I want everyone to keep this clip in mind. Actman is saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Dude, were you fucking dropped on your head as a child? Where did he state that he believes Halo is not an arena shooter?
Anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Fuck no, Halo isn't.
Were you fucking dropped on your head as a child? You cannot sit here and try and actually claim that arena shooters were not dead at the time of Duke Nukem Forever's release.
Yeah, because those other kinds of shooters that were previously swimming in this primordial soup were finally able to come into their own. Whether they be story-driven games like Half-Life 2, survival horror games like System Shock, or something more arcadey like Halo and later Call of Duty.
Hey dumbass, you just fucking repeated what he was saying. You literally took what he said and just worded it differently.
You have to lack basic comprehension skills if you seriously think that what I just said was simply repeating what the Actman said. That didn't mean that arena shooters suddenly became unpopular. And yet somehow I'm the one that's not listening.
What kind of people are you talking about here?
Do you have short-term memory loss? A normal person.
Hello, my fellow clout givers. I am here to sincerely apologize to this man named Krilix. He has made a video on me exposing me for criticizing the Actman. And I gotta say, I am really, really sorry, Krilix. I am so sorry that your video is so fucking bad that it made me contract terminal AIDS. Pfft, you thought I was actually gonna bend the knee there. Nah, you're a fucking joke. This response reaches amounts of mental gymnastics comparable to Under the Mayo's Elden Ring stream. I am telling you all right now, I have never seen a response video this bad. Not even Griffin Gaming spurgs out as much as this man. What you are about to witness is an Actman stan white knighting for their favorite YouTuber so hard that they self-admittedly did not do any research on the Actman's video, and argues in bad faith so that he could find any reason to claim Actman's in the right. I tried drilling it into Krilix that the reason why the Actman has been getting so much flack is because of how inconsistent his video is and that he got many things factually incorrect, but after I give more detail via livestream on how this is the case and how Krilix is just jumping the gun to defend his favorite YouTuber, he makes a response towards me that is undeniably the most blind defense ever made that I've witnessed in our community thus far. I thought Mayo stands were bad, but this guy tops them by a long mile. As I explained in my community post regarding his response, there are very clear straw man arguments being made here, and some of the shit this guy pulls is extremely manipulative, like cutting out important context in order to try and invalidate my points. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and go through this absolute abortion of a response.
Hello everyone, how's it going? I hope y'all are doing well. Now this isn't going to be some stupid apology video, as I frankly don't have anything to apologize for.
Right off the bat, when watching this guy's content, I can tell that he has a superiority complex. He acts like he's done absolutely nothing wrong here, despite the fact he blatantly admitted in the comments of his video on Thunderstruck that he did absolutely no research on this topic. And so he has no idea on why Actman is getting criticized to begin with. Yet he'll go on to be Actman's white knight despite all of the inaccuracies and false information he spreads. Oh, and considering all of the awful points he makes in this video, I guarantee I can find several things that this motherfucker will need to apologize for. But I highly doubt that he will go through with it, cause he has too much alcohol in his system to even come up with the concept of being wrong.
Now, in case you were unaware, this is a follow-up video from my previous video I made on Thunderstruck 115's response to the Actman. Now, as it turns out, there were quite a few individuals that were displeased, so to speak, with the way I responded to his video. Now, this is going to be a response to someone by the name of Brother Near 2.0 in his live stream. Now, there are others that made responses, but frankly, I can't be bothered to make more than one of these videos. Now, before I start, there are a few things, very, very minor things that I got wrong, such as Nintendo 64 having a Wolfenstein release, but those things are so minor that there's no real reason for me to include them into this video.
I'm sorry, what? That's a major fucking issue there. That's straight up an entirely made up game that just sparked from your brain. That's a minor mistake on your part? Nah, bro. That's major false information that you just spread.
So if you want to see the full response of Brother Near, you can check out the live stream in the description below. So with that being said, go ahead and sit back, relax, and let's see how big of an L this is going to be for me.
So because some random motherfucker that you asked doesn't know what an arena shooter is means the entire genre is just dead? What the fuck kind of logic is that?
Alright, I'm not trying to be too mean here, but one of my friends pointed this out, and I can't just unfucking hear it. You sound like a dumber Squidward. Back to the original point. I guarantee you, if I go ask any of my family members that play video games that are older than me, and that don't play video games religiously, they can't tell me what an arena shooter is. Of course, if I go ask my friends that play said game—
That's an anecdotal statement. Entirely anecdotal. That does not mean the genre is irrelevant. That was Thunderstruck's point.
Alright, what would you like me to do then? Would you like me to go into the street and interview random people on what they think an arena shooter is?
Literally nobody asked you to. You are taking our points and putting them to the extreme in order to make us look stupid, and it's really not working on us. The whole point we're trying to make is that you are making an anecdotal statement when saying your friends can't define what an arena shooter is. Why don't you do your own damn research on the topic, see how much of an audience this genre has, and realize the difference between something being dead and something not being mainstream? Because this whole entire time you conflate the two in order to create this false narrative that no one cares about this genre, which is precisely the same reason why the Actman has been getting criticized. You of all people would have known this if you actually bothered to do the bare minimum and research the Actman's video, or even looked up responses to his video that disprove his points.
You know, how about you actually step outside and go ask normal people? Not your friends that stay on YouTube all day. Just go ask normal people.
Ah yes, because people that have knowledge on the arena shooter genre are most certainly not normal people. Like, what the fuck does this guy classify as normal people here? You really need to provide a better argument rather than just generalizing a specific audience and disregarding them because they aren't quote-unquote normal people to you. Oh, and P.S. I probably went outside more for the past 3 months than you ever have in your life. You can't tell me otherwise when you're the resident alcoholic here.
Because personally, I'm not going to put in the effort to go interview 50 random people off the street to see if they can identify what an arena shooter is.
You could also apply that same logic to genres such as MOBAs, ARPGs, and RTS games. I bet you those quote-unquote normal people aren't gonna know what those are either.
With me, they're gonna be able to tell me what it is because they fucking play them with me. But most normal people cannot define an arena shooter. And that's because they're so irrelevant nowadays, with the exception of Doom. Hell, even you yourself when it comes to the single—
Are we gonna ignore Quake now?
When the newest Quake entry can't even get 1,000 players, yeah, Quake multiplayer is irrelevant right now.
I'm not talking about how many people are playing Quake right now. I'm talking about the popularity of the title. How many people out there know what Quake is? How many people know what Doom is? How many people know what Proteus, Dusk, Duke Nukem, and any other arena shooter out there? Your original point in response to Thunderstruck is that no one can define an arena shooter title with the exception of Doom, which is why I pointed out Quake on stream. But now you're shifting the goalpost to say that Quake is irrelevant because the newest installment can barely scratch 1,000 players, when that wasn't the original point being addressed here. Are we gonna ignore Quake? Are we gonna ignore Unreal Tournament? Because those are pretty popular. Are they alive? I don't know, I don't play them.
My guy, if you don't even know if they're alive or dead or not, why the fuck are you even bringing them up?
Because the point is people know what these games are. Whether their active player base is small or not is irrelevant when the point I'm trying to make is that people know what Unreal Tournament is. The entire basis of my point can be summed up with one word: notoriety. I know you never heard of Dusk or Proteus before any of this, but just because you don't know them or that their player bases are not as active as the mainstream games doesn't mean they don't exist or are irrelevant. If Dusk was so irrelevant like you love to claim, then how come when I go to New Blood's Discord there are hundreds of people talking about Dusk to this day? That tells me that the game has an audience, regardless if you want to call it irrelevant or dead. Proteus has that same audience as well, with hundreds of people using it for its level editor. And before you say this has nothing to do with multiplayer, yes it does. People create deathmatch arenas in Proteus's level editor as well. Stop perpetuating the stigma that Actman claims is sad over.
Also, unless your friend just doesn't really follow gaming that closely, I highly doubt that he doesn't know of any arena shooters, especially considering that, you know, Doom Eternal is a thing.
That's the thing though, most people do not follow gaming closely. They play the few games they
Source?
You know, if you stepped outside, went into the real world and interacted with real normal people, you would see plain as day my fucking source.
That's right, everyone. Krilix said his source is to go outside. Therefore, he's perfectly valid in saying that arena shooters are dead. So, Max Soar's input on arena shooters doesn't matter. Neither does Cat Bombs, Civi 11s, Gianni Matragrano, that Trav guy, Mandalore Gaming, G-Man Lives, Mr. John Reviews. Hell, let's throw Under the Mayo in there. I guess none of those guys' input matters because Krilix said we just need to go outside and find out for ourselves if quote-unquote normal people know what arena shooters are. I'm sorry, but if that's the only argument you have to support your claim on how the genre is dying or dead, then you have to be an idiot. There's no other way around it. What kind of perspective are you talking about here? What is this perspective you're going for? A lot of people don't follow gaming that closely. Okay, what kind of people are you talking about here?
Do you have short-term memory loss? I literally just fucking stated I'm talking about from the perspective of a normal person. A normal person.
That doesn't tell me anything. What are these normal people in question? And if they by chance know about arena shooters like Quake, what's your argument then? Are they suddenly not normal people now? Like, if you really have to try this hard to prove how this genre is dead, then you're straight up pathetic.
Playing, whether it be FIFA, Call of Duty, Forza, whatever it may be. But that's about how
What do those games have to do with the genre or the topic at hand here? Are you fucking retarded? What do Forza or FIFA or whatever the fuck have to do with arena shooters? What? Because people play games like Forza or FIFA or look into games like that, that somehow means they don't look into games like Doom or Quake anymore?
Mind pointing out where the fuck I said that? Because nowhere throughout that clip did I even fucking hint at that. I stated people play the games they enjoy, and that's about it. Most people do not dive into the deep gaming news side of things. They just play the games they enjoy, and that's about it.
Okay, but one, arena shooters are not this obscure. I don't know where you're getting this idea from, but arena shooters are very well known despite not being in the mainstream. Stop conflating that by saying the genre's dead. And two, just because people like to play games they enjoy does not mean they won't enjoy arena shooters. That's inherently subjective.
I hoped that someone with room temperature IQ would at least be able to understand that, but I guess I was fucking wrong.
You know, it's really telling of your character when you can't go one response session without throwing an insult. Not only does it make me take you even less seriously, but it also tells me you're easy to aggravate, which is a pretty common pattern for alcoholics. I mean, at least Road Breach was self-aware, but you've been kinda coping by saying that this is just a bit, which, yeah, sure buddy.
Though developers have tried to revitalize the arena shooter genre, it seems none have really been successful.
Oh, none have been successful besides, Wolfenstein The New Order, Proteus, Dusk, Ultra Kill, Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal.
Holy shit, my fucking ears. Loud does not equal funny. Please
Subjective.
keep that in mind. To address your points, I've never heard of Dusk or fucking Proteus, and I play arena.
You're living under a rock then.
How am I the one living under a rock? Dusk at its all-time high had 557 active players. Now it can barely reach 200, and Proteus can barely even reach 50 fucking players. How am I the one living under a fucking rock when I haven't played games no one fucking plays?
Once again, I am talking about how well known these games are, which both games are pretty well known. Just cause you've never heard of them doesn't mean they don't exist. I also love how you go with the narrative that since games like Proteus and Dusk have such low player counts, then that means nobody knows what those games are. When you look at the sales for both games, they've sold pretty well. Dusk got 8,000 pre-orders, sold 22,000 copies during early access, and eventually sold an additional 40,000 copies afterwards. And copies of Dusk are still being sold to this day. All of those sales were literally in the first month of it being a thing. Mind you, This is most likely the reason why Dusk got ported to the Nintendo Switch, which also has its own exclusive Endless stage. Meanwhile, Proteus sold 153,000 copies. Both of these games, by the way, are part of the indie scene, and the fact they sold this much should count as proof that this genre still has a massive audience. This tells me that despite this narrative you and Actman want to create that these arena shooters are irrelevant and that you're somehow not living under a rock, the arena shooter genre still has a market, and there's clearly a profit off of that market. Conflating that with how low the current player bases are is utterly moronic. Because Proteus and Dusk, well, more so Dusk, are pretty good examples of competent arena shooters that were made recently. Especially Dusk. Dusk is extremely popular.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. Doesn't matter how much you want to conflate active player base with literally the entire New Blood community, where its Discord server has over 80,000 members. Oh, and the cherry on top, are we just gonna ignore the 16,000 reviews on Steam, which are mostly positive? But sure, go off, Queen. Let me check the Dusk concurrent player count. 229 playing 17 minutes ago, 238 24-hour peak, all-time peak 557.
This is 4K! How did they get you at 4K?
Yes, bravo! You still missed the point, retard. You act like the all-time peak is every single player that has ever played the game. Regardless, I'm not just talking about the active player base. And, as you can see, Krilix conveniently cut off something else I said afterwards in order to gain an imaginary W. So, let's hear some of the context that Krilix conveniently cut out. Yeah, it is dead. Pretty much. Not dead, but it's got a pretty small constant player base here. But despite that, a lot of people know what Dusk is. People like Civi11 talked about Dusk. A lot of people know what Dusk is, it's just that not enough people play it to have like a huge player base. Right? But people still know what Dusk is, it has an audience. The brand new norm of underground commentary channels. Cut out important context in order to make someone bigger look bad so that they can claim an imaginary win over you. Oh wait, they already do that, so Krilix may as well jump into the boat of sewer goblins on YouTube.
He's talking about multiplayer arena shooters, dumbass. No one has made a good arena shooter that is multiplayer as of
Example?
Do you realize what you just asked me? You asked me to provide an example of there being no good popular arena shooters that are multiplayer.
Nope, wrong again. Yet another case of Krilix cutting out important context, but this time he's doing this in order to make a straw man argument, claiming that I am asking for an example over nothing, and he only responds to the rest of my question right afterwards, so this section did not need to exist. So what classifies as a good arena shooter to you?
Well, Nier, to answer your question, it's a very, very simple answer. One that I have fun in.
My brother in Christ, you play Destiny. Your opinion on what's considered fun to you was already disregarded the moment I even booted up your previous video. Let's get that out of the way. What was the last arena shooter to you that was good? What do you define as a good arena shooter as of recent? What is the most recent good arena shooter that you can think of right now, Krilix?
Also, another really simple answer. We're talking about multiplayer arena shooters, which I assume you are. That would be Halo 5, which released in 2015, 8 years ago.
And just like that, your credibility and stance regarding the arena shooter genre plummets into the abyss. If you really think that Halo 5 was the last competent arena shooter ever made, then you truly are living under a rock. This also contradicts what you said in your response to Thunderstruck 115, where you said that Doom Eternal is a good arena shooter, since Thunderstruck brought up examples to prove that the genre is still going. So which one is it, Krilix? Was Halo 5 the last good arena shooter, or was Doom Eternal the last good arena shooter? And another thing, it really feels like you value your opinion regarding certain games above others, which is further proof that you have a superiority complex, especially since you claimed that nobody cares about games like Dusk or Proteus, despite the large amount of success both games have had. And before you tell me that good sales doesn't equal good game, which is a fair argument, both games are highly acclaimed as well, both by Steam reviewers and critics. You tell me. Quake Champions? That was 2017. You want to know a really good arena shooter that came after Quake Champions? Dusk. Proteus.
Bro, I'm not touching Proteus.
Your loss, cause unlike you, I know what good arena shooters look like, and I play them. I'm not stuck in the past thinking Halo 5 was the last good one. You can keep coping on that one. It's also ironic coming from you, a self-proclaimed arena shooter fan. But again, your loss, dude.
You can't even get 50 players into that game for multiplayer. And Dusk, once again, multiplayer's dead as fuck.
Okay, let's twist the argument you made earlier when you criticized me for bringing up Unreal Tournament and Quake despite not playing them. How do you know that the multiplayer in Dusk is dead? You've never played them, therefore you have no say on the matter. You can bring up Steam statistics all you like, but it's not going to be nearly enough to convince me that the arena shooter genre is no longer cared about when there is very clearly an audience for it. You do know for the all-time peak on Steam charts, that's just the highest amount of players the game's gotten in one moment, right? Meanwhile, with the 24-hour peak and last played number of minutes ago, it could just be completely different players at any time. So taking that into consideration, there's most likely a lot more players out there than you think. What's another good one? Shit, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Is it really on the tip of your tongue? Because I'm more inclined to believe that you just can't think of any more examples.
Okay, I'll admit, I couldn't remember what else was there to count as an arena shooter that came out after Quake Champions. I thought about adding in Ultra Kill and a Medieval into the equation, but neither of those games are considered arena shooters. But at least I came up with good examples like Dusk and Proteus. Meanwhile, your dumbass thinks Halo 5 was the last competent arena shooter ever made. Also, go ahead and ignore Doom 2016, which came out a year after Halo 5. I'm thinking of a New Blood title. It's not a Medieval. A Medieval is not one. Yeah, we can count Halo. We can count Halo as one. Halo Infinite.
You can't be serious right now. Halo Infinite was anything but competent at launch.
Really? It may have had a rocky launch, but if I recall, the most positive thing I've heard about Halo Infinite, which also comes from me by the way, of all people, that the strongest foundation Halo Infinite had was its gameplay. The movement was the most fluid in any Halo game to the point that that's where the stupid sprint debate was settled. The gunplay was fantastic, the maps were good, the grappling hook added a lot more flavor to the combat since it enhanced movement and made it so that you could hijack vehicles. Pretty much the gist with how Halo Infinite was received was that the gameplay was critically acclaimed as one of the best gameplays in a Halo game, but everything else surrounding it was critically negative.
The game launched with 6 maps and it took them over a fucking year to add one singular gun.
False information has been detected. Halo Infinite launched with 10 maps. 3 of them were big team battle maps, the rest were arena maps. Also, I know he's talking about the launch state, but they added in 4 more maps than just those 10. It's not really a good amount added, but it is something.
That has already been in previous Halo games, might I add. Not to mention the fact that you couldn't even pick what mode you wanted to play when the game launched, and we still don't have basic ass game modes like Griff Ball or Infection.
Nothing about this has anything to do with Halo Infinite being an arena shooter or not, by the way.
You're really gonna claim that GoldenEye forces you to make more decisions in gameplay than something like Doom or Quake?
My guy, when the fuck did he say that? Never once did he say GoldenEye forces you to make more decisions than Doom or Quake. He said it forces you to make more slower and methodical decisions.
Yeah, fuck no you don't. Auto-aim pistol go burr.
Doom and Quake have a wide variety of...
Okay, but that also doesn't mean that he didn't invalidate quote-unquote decisions in games like Quake or Doom.
How on earth did he invalidate decision-making in Quake or Doom? He himself is on record saying you need to make decisions in Doom and Quake. What the fuck are you on about?
No, he was making an entire point about GoldenEye somehow letting you make more methodical decisions, like you yourself claimed in response to Thunderstruck. Literally, in Actman's own video, he said that arena shooters are too fast and chaotic in order to make those decisions. And later on creates the narrative that one of the reasons that the arena shooter genre died off was because it wasn't accessible to new players. It's almost like you don't even remember your own video despite it being released very recently. Looks like you are the one that has
short-term memory loss?
Okay, dude, if you're gonna be responding to my livestream, at least do us a favor and cut out the dead air. So, how is GoldenEye any different on how it plays compared to Doom or Quake.
Holy shit, your intelligence level is fucking mind-blowing. What kind of knuckle-dragging retard actually asks that question?
Wow, what an insightful response, Krilix. Don't even answer the question, just continue to act like the average douchebag that most likely got shoved into lockers in middle school and have started projecting their shitty days onto others ever since. I will ask the question again, and this time with more context that you decided to cut out because you lack the balls to make a proper coherent argument. How is GoldenEye any different on how it plays compared to Doom or Quake? It's not really different when you consider the incredibly outdated controls on GoldenEye. It's not really that different. So I don't know where Actman's coming from with that. I will wait patiently for your response.
Debate has been had over whether Halo is an arena shooter or not. While I think it's much more similar to this older genre of game than something like Call of Duty, anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter. Movement is much—
Wow, Krilix, nice obvious cut there. You not gonna address this?
Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Once again, I must point out, where the fuck did the thread go? But anyways, in my joke comment, as a Halo and Quake player, Halo is an arena shooter. Try to argue against that, Actman. Which, by the way, that was a joke comment I left on his video on Thunderstruck 115, and he agreed with me that Halo is in fact an arena shooter, and apparently Halo Infinite is not considered a competent arena shooter in his eyes because of how it launched, despite how highly acclaimed the gameplay was despite everything else around it. The irony, man, you love to see it.
Movement is much slower. You can only carry 2 weapons, not to mention melee and grenades weren't treated as their own weapons on a dial, regenerating health, etc.
Alright, I want everyone to keep this clip in mind. Actman is saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Dude, were you fucking dropped on your head as a child? Where did he state that he believes Halo is not an arena shooter? If you actually listen to what he fucking said, he's talking about the people who primarily play Doom and Quake.
Okay, I need to get this out of the way and drill in as much as I can on just how oblivious and retarded Krilix is. Actman said verbatim,
Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
and he in his own video continues to run with this narrative that this is backed up by supposed Doom and Quake players, and later on in his video says,
The release of COD 4 and Halo 3 pretty much sealed the fate of arena shooters and denied their future relevance in gaming. If you weren't willing to adapt, you weren't going to succeed.
and yet despite all of these concrete details that have been mentioned numerous times, both by me and Thunderstruck, Krilix is still gonna try and gaslight us into thinking we misinterpreted the Actman's point. You really cannot make this shit up. Even Under the Mayo wasn't this disingenuous when talking about Ultra Kill. So what about that makes it so that he isn't claiming that Halo isn't an arena shooter?
I don't know. Maybe the fact he didn't fucking say it?
I don't know. I think he objectively said it. Want to hear it again?
Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter. Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter. Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
God, and I thought you'd actually start thinking before you spoke, after that Discord drama video made on Griffin.
Bro, the amount of times you project your insecurities onto me is too much. Please stop. But other than that, you gotta love how one of the most common things that sewer goblins on YouTube like Krilix here do when it comes to YouTube drama is bring up something completely irrelevant to the conversation in order to try and destroy your credibility. Like, this is the most common ad hominem that I've ever encountered. And every time someone does it, it just gets funnier every time. Here's a community post I made a year ago about it, and I still stand by it to this day, and it can be applied to any context when someone just loves to bring it up as some sort of silver bullet. To all the fanboys that like to bring up the Griffin Discord drama all because I criticized him over a video game, an orangutan with Down syndrome has more logic than you. This tells me that you have absolutely no argument about the current topic, so you have to resort to bringing up irrelevant shit just so you can try to invalidate my points. That's not how this works. I am very aware that what I did back then was incredibly incredibly stupid, and I was pretty much a cancel culture snowflake back then. But if you take a look at this entire channel, you can see how I evolved. I learned from my mistakes, and now I'm closer to 1K than ever before. So if that's all you can come up with in order to invalidate my video, then that means I won. Go cry to Griffin, you little sissies.
But I guess I stand corrected.
And aside from many visual upgrades, there hadn't been much that changed.
But if you look at arena shooters nowadays, they have changed. They were able to adapt, and therefore they have been able to be successful.
No, the core gameplay of arena shooters is still very much the same. You have the no weapons.
Yeah, the core gameplay. But what about the innovations that games like Ultra Kill made? Even though that's kind of conflating arena shooters with boomer shooters in general, doesn't mean that they're the exact same game. Sure, the core gameplay is there, it's the same, but different arena shooters or different boomer shooters have innovative mechanics.
Make sure y'all prepare yourselves for the absolute mental midgetry about to take place here.
Mental midgetry? Ho ho ho.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Ultra Kill has the marksman pistol. You flip a coin, you shoot it, it reflects to a nearby enemy, and it targets its weak spot.
How is that innovative?
Okay, Krilix, can you name me one game that came before Ultra Kill that came up with this mechanic? Go ahead, I'll wait.
That is more of a gimmick or a quirk about the game. That's not fucking innovative.
Ah, so when I bring up proper examples of a game that innovates on the arena shooter / boomer shooter genre, you just downplay it as just a gimmick. Once again, drilling into the irony of this guy supposedly being an arena shooter fan.
It's just like shooting a demon's weak point with a ballista with extra fucking steps.
That literally does not disprove of it being an innovation on the arena shooter genre. Proteus. Every single weapon has an alt fire.
How is Proteus the one that innovated on that?
Because it takes its own spin on Doom Eternal's alt fires. I think you need a dictionary so that you can find out what the word innovation means. And yes, I'm gonna insult you back. You know, if you're gonna be a smug douchebag, then I figure I can be one right back at you. And it has its own map editor, where you can create custom levels, even for the multiplayer.
I hate to break it to you, but Halo 3 did that 13 years before Proteus came out.
Proteus's level editor is fucking leagues ahead of Halo 3's Forge, but I don't expect you to know that considering earlier, you, the self-proclaimed arena shooter fan, do not want to give Proteus a shot. We can also bring up Doom 2016's Snap Map, which is also a much better level editor than Halo 3's Forge. Textbook definition of an armchair pseudo-intellectual, downplaying a renowned feature in a game just because he doesn't like it.
And these guys are trying to say I did no fucking research.
Yeah, cause you didn't. You literally admitted to it. Get off your high horse, you fucking douchebag. Dusk. You can do front flips and back flips in Dusk. Self-proclaimed arena shooter fan, by the way, downplays the concept of doing flips in an arena shooter, which by itself makes it possible to kill enemy players upside down. Really gotta love the irony here. Titanfall 2, you had the new grappling hook mechanic that very much increased the movement speed of the game.
I thought we were talking about arena shooters. Where the fuck did Titanfall 2 come from? And if you're really out here trying to call Titanfall 2 an arena shooter, then you better be calling Call of Duty an arena shooter.
Okay, Krilix, tell me how Titanfall 2 is not an arena shooter. What factors of the game arbitrarily separate itself from the genre? Now granted, Titanfall 2 is not a traditional arena shooter like he loves to claim that I'm saying, but there are arena shooter qualities within it. That's the entire point I'm trying to make.
Kind of game, drifting from its roots.
Yeah, and Doom 3 fucking sucked. What's your point?
His point was that Doom was no longer an arena shooter at that point in time, further showing how arena shooters were dying off. Do you have basic comprehension skills, or are you really just this fucking stupid?
So because Doom 3 was entirely different compared to its predecessors, that means the genre's dead.
No, but it definitely contributed to the fall in popularity of arena shooters, which, you know, is exactly what I stated.
No, if anything, Doom 3 proved that there was still an audience for arena shooters. Why? Because Doom 3 received a lot of backlash for not being a Doom game. It's not that the audience was dwindling because the game was different, but rather the game was trying to appeal to the mass market ever since games like Halo, Half-Life, and Call of Duty came out. Stop conflating a genre being dead with a genre not being mainstream. Never mind the fact that people could just go back to games like Doom, or Doom 2, or Doom 64, or any other boomer shooter like Marathon, or whatever the fuck, Duke Nukem, Quake. So just because Doom 3 was massively different, that means somehow the genre's dead.
You know, by your same logic, it is completely impossible for any game genre to die because they can just go back and play previous iterations of said genre.
Yes! Yes, Krilix! That's correct! You made an actually valid point, but you framed it as if it's a stupid point to make. How the fuck did you manage to do that? You inadvertently made a good point without realizing it. Oh my god, the mental gymnastics are astounding.
Which is completely stupid, because most people are not going to want to downgrade that much on the main game they play.
How is that downgrading? This is literally how game preservation works. If nobody went back to previous iterations of game titles, then by your own logic, people would not be playing critically acclaimed games like Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies, the original Doom, Quake Live, the original Half-Life, Halo Combat Evolved, or any other old video game out there. Holy shit, dude. It's like you're actually trying to be retarded.
And just so your atom-sized brain can understand it, by most people, I mean most normal people.
I guarantee you that 80% of the quote-unquote normal people that you want to cherry pick that are in the age range of 30 to 60 have probably played the original Quake and Doom. So if that's the case, then what's your argument then? Are they not normal people now? You're really gonna try and push that narrative even more?
Not to mention Counter-Strike had seen a major update with CS Source, and Call of Duty was starting its run of success as World War II shooters were becoming more mainstream. Add on to this the rise of Battlefield, Battlefront, and other massive FPS titles, and the once mighty pie that arena shooters alone used to feast on was being consumed by many others.
Yeah, because those other...
So Actman's argument here is that arena shooters were becoming more irrelevant because of games like Counter-Strike or Battlefield or Medal of Honor or Call of Duty, which is fair because the mass market appeal. But just because there's a mass market appeal for those games doesn't mean the genre's dead, because clearly there's still an audience there. Now here's Thunderstruck's argument.
Kinds of shooters that were previously swimming in this primordial soup were finally able to come into their own. Whether they be story-driven games like Half-Life 2, survival horror games like System Shock, or something more arcadey like Halo and later Call of Duty.
Hey dumbass, you just fucking repeated what he was saying. You literally took what he said.
Did he really repeat what Actman was saying? It sounded more like he was arguing in favor of the arena shooter genre and how it was evolving.
You went full retard, man.
Oh, well did he now? Well, would you be so kind as to point out the example of how he explained that? Because if you go back and watch the clip, you can see that nowhere in that clip did he say that.
Yeah, he never explicitly said it, but the implications are there. You just can't comprehend subtlety because you're still the same alcoholic on there, period. The whole point that Thunderstruck was making is that those games did not destroy the audience of arena shooters. It just means that a brand new audience was made, and that did not take away people from that audience.
Oh, and early in the stream, were you not trying to insult me on not being able to listen to what was being said?
Yeah, cause you fucking don't. You have the attention span of a spoon. But no, he's just regurgitating what Actman said. Thunderstruck, am I wrong? Aren't you arguing in favor of the arena shooter genre and how they were evolving?
Hold up. Wait a minute.
First of all, like I said earlier, I would love for you to point out where at all he even remotely hinted at saying that. Secondly, throughout this entire live stream, you are talking about the Actman being completely biased against arena shooters, but yet you're going to ask Thunderstruck, which, might I add, couldn't be more of a biased party in this situation, if he said something that he clearly did not say in the video clip. Of course he's going to say everything he can to make himself not look fucking stupid.
That's right, everyone. According to Krilix, he is completely allowed to argue in bad faith against me and Thunderstruck without watching Actman's full video to get the full context of the situation and properly understand why he got so much flack to begin with. But all of a sudden, I'm the bad guy for arguing in good faith for Thunderstruck. Oh, and by the way, yes, cuckbag, he absolutely did imply that. This motherfucker likes to act that there isn't a thing called subtlety in conversation. Saying that arena shooters were still doing fine, but now other types of shooters were also doing fine. That's fair. That's basically saying that a genre still has an audience, despite the mass market appeal going towards games like Call of Duty.
Okay, let me lay this out as simply as possible for your dumbass, okay? The Actman stated that the arena shooter audience had started to dwindle because of the release and popularity of newer shooters that were not of the arena shooter genre.
Yeah, and that's straight up wrong. It's not that the audience started to dwindle because of new genres of shooters, it's that those games created a brand new audience, and that does not take away from that already existing audience for the arena shooter genre. I mean, put it this way, if what Actman was saying were true, then games like Proteus, Quake Live, Doom 2016, and Dusk would straight up not exist. But guess what? They do. Because there's a market for it. And why is there a market for it? Because the arena shooter audience is still a thing.
And then Thunderstruck proceeded to say the exact same thing.
And you're wrong. Thunderstruck said so in my live stream's chat, and he said it himself in his fairly recent response towards your video.
You have to lack basic comprehension skills if you seriously think that what I just said was simply repeating what the Actman said. No, he was saying that arena shooters were having their slice of the FPS pie being eaten by other types of FPS games. What I was saying is that while other shooters were becoming more popular, that didn't mean that arena shooters suddenly became unpopular. And yet somehow I'm the one that's not listening.
Krilix, lay off the Bud Light and realize that your gaslighting is not going to work on either of us.
Also, side note, a game can have an audience and still be irrelevant.
And your statistic of this is concurrent player counts on Steam, which is not at all relevant to the point I was making when it came to how these games have notoriety.
This is not me nitpicking as you guys kept bringing this game up, but for example, Proteus has an audience on average of 50 to 60 players.
Once again, the 24-hour peak of Steam charts does not exactly correlate to how many people know of the game and play it. Those 50 to 60 players could be completely different people every time you view the statistics. The only statistic on Steam charts that would count the same exact people would be the all-time peak. The amount of players that are playing the game right now does not mean that is the game's entire audience. This is yet another straw man.
Once the Xbox One and PS4 generation kicked off, then arena shooters really started to come back and showed that they were certainly alive and well.
I want you to do me a quick favor here, okay? Can you name one multiplayer arena shooter that was alive anywhere near to the point of Halo or Call of Duty?
Doom 2016.
You may have the slightest bit of an argument if you're talking about purely the first month of Doom 2016's release. After that, the player count drops drastically speaking.
I mean, if your standard for a video game genre being relevant is something along the likes of Call of Duty, then by your own logic, every single other shooter genre is dead, because Call of Duty is pretty much in a league of its own. The closest game I could compare to Call of Duty's consistent player count right now is Team Fortress 2. And before you go, hey dumbass, Team Fortress 2 is not an arena shooter, it's a class shooter. A class shooter is considered a subgenre of an arena shooter. Plus, Team Fortress literally originated as a mod for Quake, as explained in the Actman's video. But you wouldn't know that since you self-admittedly did not do research on this topic.
And I'm not saying I prefer it this way, I played the shit out of Doom 2016.
But Krilix, I thought you said the last good arena shooter was Halo 5. Why are you backtracking, man? Which one is it? Are we gonna ignore that game's existence now? Sure, it may not be as active as when it was launched, but it was alive. The multiplayer on Doom 2016 was alive. Are we gonna ignore that game's existence now?
I mean, if you want to count 1,000 players on average as a multiplayer game being alive and well, then yeah, I guess you could say Doom 2016's multiplayer was alive and well. But then again, that's a very, very low standard to call a game alive and well.
You're seriously gonna sit here and tell me that roughly 1,000 people consistently played Doom 2016's multiplayer at launch, when the all-time peak of Doom 2016 on Steam was 31,000 players, and the game sold over 500,000 copies by the end of May 2016. You can make the argument that Doom 2016 is more well known for its single player, but that does not invalidate the multiplayer experience that people had.
Oh, and I'd also like to mention that that's assuming that all players that were online at that time were playing the multiplayer instead of the single player, which, you know, most people played Doom 2016 for.
Hey dumbass, mind telling me where I even hinted that people exclusively played the multiplayer of Doom 2016? Here's a fucking hint, I never did. Oh, don't mind me, I'm just taking the piss out of how you sound, act, and make these stupid arguments. Like, oh my god. Technically, we can also count Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is an arena shooter. At least the multiplayer side.
One, Halo Infinite launched like dog shit.
Which has absolutely nothing to do with the point I'm making. The state of the game at launch has no correlation to it being an arena shooter or not.
2, Halo Infinite can't even get a higher player count than Battlefield 2042, and that is fucking sad.
Okay, bro, are we really gonna deny that Halo Infinite was not the most hyped up game of 2021, and that despite the state of everything else about that game, that the gameplay was considered one of the best ever done in a Halo game? Like, come the fuck on, dude. You are completely leaving out the notoriety that I have been mentioning throughout this entire stream of mine. And if you consider the core Halo series to be an arena shooter, then how is the arena shooter genre dead when so many people hyped this game up? You really have to try and twist the narrative for your own benefit in order to come to this conclusion.
And 3, Halo Infinite came out a year after the Series X launched. He's talking about the Xbox One generation, dipshit.
Oh wow, really? I didn't know that a game coming out after the Series X generation would go against Thunderstruck's point that the arena shooter genre made a comeback during a specific era of console gaming. Like, Jesus Christ, dude, you really need to work on making better arguments. Alternatively, you could just delete your irrelevant channel, but that's besides the point. If anything, since Halo Infinite was so hyped up, that pretty much seals the deal that the arena shooter genre still has an audience. So again, I must beg the question, if arena shooters are dead, then why was Halo Infinite so hyped up to begin with?
In the Xbox One or PS4 generation. Just name one, and notice how I said fucking multiplayer, dumbass, not single
Doom 2016.
player.
FPS.
Dusk even. That's not on console, but Dusk.
Well, at least you named a game from that generation, but that's completely overshadowed with the fact that Dusk at its peak had 557 players playing at the same time. I said anywhere near to the point of Halo or Call of Duty.
Okay, retard, name me one shooter, any shooter out there, not exclusively an arena shooter, but any shooter out there in existence that has any sort of competition with Call of Duty's consistent player count. Exactly, you can't, because once again, Call of Duty is on a league of its own. By your standards, every single shooter out there that is not Call of Duty is fucking dead. Don't complain to me about it. I am simply going off your perspective.
The amount of stupidity in this video is fucking insane on your part. I thought you at least had room temperature IQ, but at this point I'm thinking it's more towards freezing levels.
And I thought you would have a consistent argument on why the arena shooter genre is dead, but it turns out not only are you completely unself-aware, but your stance on the arena shooter genre is about as credible as... Actually, not even that. You have no credibility. You never watched the Actman's video before responding to Thunderstruck. You continue to argue in bad faith against him and me. You constantly try to gaslight us into thinking that we said something null, or that we claimed Actman said something he never said, when there is concrete fucking evidence of there being the case. And judging by the fact that you said Halo 5 was the last competent arena shooter, despite later saying you played the shit out of Doom 2016, but also said Doom Eternal is a good arena shooter in response to Thunderstruck, that you most likely do not ever proofread your scripts, if you even had a script to begin with. You are the textbook definition of an armchair pseudo-intellectual. Get off your high horse, lay off the alcohol, go use your tampons to sedate your period, consider going to rehab, and realize that your video is a fucking abortion. Oh, and stop playing Destiny. That shit probably fried your brain to the point that this video of yours even exists.
Battlefield had squads. Counter-Strike had teamwork and coordination. And arena shooters were still just zipping and zooming around without a care in the world. You guys want to go fast again? Are we still popular? I hope so.
I mean, right there, you gave a reason for people to play arena shooters that they might not get in other types of shooters.
I swear, this entire video is literally you hearing what he's saying, but not actually listening to what he's fucking saying. Cause he's talking about the social aspect of things. Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Halo were a lot more social than any of the Quake, Doom, or Duke Nukem games.
Again, just because the mass market preferred those games over arena shooters, that doesn't mean the audience for that genre is non-existent now.
I never said the audience was non-existent. Hell, they're my favorite type of shooter to fucking play.
Oh, really now? Why don't you go play Dusk and Proteus then? After all, arena shooters are your favorite shooter genre to play. Oh yeah, you don't even want to touch them. Some arena shooter fan you are. See? I can be a gaslighting asshole too. It's more like you're coming up with excuses to defend Actman here.
Oh, am I now? Because it appears to me that you're reaching as far as humanly possible to defend your little friend Thunderstruck over there.
Yeah, and my little quote-unquote reach in order to defend Thunderstruck just got confirmed from his response video towards you. So checkmate, bitch.
Go play Titanfall.
Like in something like
Oh hey, that's another game we can name that's on console and appeal to the mass market. Titanfall! We can add that to the list. Thank you, Krilix.
Look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
Are you mentally fucking retarded?
Krilix, for the last time, stop projecting your insecurities onto me.
How is Titanfall 2 at all a fucking arena shooter? The only thing you could remotely call an arena shooter aspect of Titanfall 2 is the movement speed. Everything else goes completely against what arena shooters stand for.
Brace yourselves for more inconsistencies from our good little friend Krilix here.
There is no fucking even starts. You start with a loadout that you make that you can put literally anything in there.
Doom 2016 did not have even starts either. You had custom loadouts to choose from in Doom 2016's multiplayer. Doom Eternal's battle mode is not even either, as one player is the Doomslayer and the other two players are different types of demons. Same thing goes with games like Halo 4 and Team Fortress 2, both of which people consider arena shooters. If those games can be considered arena shooters despite not having even starts, then Titanfall 2 is most definitely an arena shooter with that into consideration.
There are no weapon pickups around the map.
True, I'll give you that one.
There are no power-ups.
No power-ups on the map, sure, but the game has Titan cores and tactical abilities, which can be compared to power-ups.
How the fuck is Titanfall 2 at all an arena shooter, you knuckle-dragging retard?
Okay, genuine question. Are you capable of making an argument without throwing a temper tantrum? Because I feel like I'm getting a rise out of you simply from hearing you spurg into the mic like a 5-year-old losing in a 1v1 in Call of Duty. What about Titanfall separates itself from the arena shooter genre? Explain. Explain, Krilix! What about Titanfall's mechanics arbitrarily separates itself from the arena shooter genre? Explain yourself.
Okay, I cannot be bothered to go back and look at the beginning of the stream, but if I remember correctly, you stated that you have never played Titanfall 2 before, so talk about a lack of fucking research.
Has this man never heard of people watching gameplay videos? You act like since I've never had any personal experience with the game, then that somehow makes my argument about the game being an arena shooter or not invalid. I can literally watch my friend play Titanfall 2 and clearly see that there are arena shooter elements in the game. I've never argued that Titanfall 2 is a traditional arena shooter. The most accurate description I've heard for it is that it's purely a movement shooter. But the point I was trying to make is that there is arena shooter DNA in it. And maybe, in your own words, if you took the time to listen, you would understand that.
There is regenerating health.
The entire Halo series has regenerating shields, and you consider that game series to be an arena shooter. Once again, your definition of an arena shooter is about as inconsistent as fucking Actman's.
There's a 2-weapon limit, which I know Halo and Splitgate have a 2-weapon limit. They are still arena shooters, but not nearly as much as a game like Quake.
My brother in Christ, you genuinely cannot sit here and say that a 2-weapon limit means that a specific game cannot be an arena shooter, but then make games like Splitgate and Halo exceptions to that rule. With that in mind, you may as well make Doom 2016 another one of those exceptions, as well as Halo 5 and Titanfall 2.
How much further away from an arena shooter can you fucking get? How the fuck are you going to try and harp on me for a quote lack of research when you're making dumbass comments like fucking this?
I mean, considering you're the one that self-admittedly never watched the Actman's video to begin with and continue to argue in bad faith, and earlier just contradicted yourself in your own argument with specific games like Splitgate having 2-weapon limits but are still considered arena shooters, you are the last person to criticize me for making dumbass comments, among many, many other statements you have made.
Are you seriously going to try and sit here and tell me that the chat log in fucking Doom 1993 is anywhere at all comparable to actually talking to the enemy team in Call of Duty or Halo? Because if so, that's a big fucking reach, my guy.
Why didn't arena
How is that a reach? What? Voice chat and text are literally how you communicate in multiplayer. What? 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 Really? That's a reach?
So you're gonna sit there and try and tell me that doing this
Jesus Christ, you type almost as slow as Tomboy.
is the same as doing this.
You guys fucking learn how to actually play the fucking game and talk. Shoot a gun, dog. Learn how to fucking shoot a gun, you fucking
They are the same, as in they are both used to communicate with players during, before, or after a match. The fact I even had to explain that to you is baffling.
Like I said, it's ironic how you try and trash Actman for his biases, but are completely blind to your own.
Ah yes, because my bias has anything to do with me explaining that voice chat and text chat are both used for communicating with players. Alcohol really does impair your judgment. Titans, loadouts, chosen abilities, it's not a traditional arena shooter. I'm not arguing that it is a traditional arena shooter, but what I am saying is that Titanfall has a lot of arena shooter DNA within it. It has really fast movement. It's got a lot of different guns you can use.
By your same fucking logic, games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, Destiny fucking 2 are arena shooters.
Hey dipshit, why don't you fucking listen? I clearly said earlier, before listing off my reasons there, that I never said Titanfall 2 is a traditional arena shooter, and that it clearly takes its own spin on the genre. But I guess that's too much to ask from an alcoholic like you. God, I'm having way too much fun with this.
By those requirements, you can't even hold on to your own definition of a fucking arena shooter.
And neither can you, apparently.
There is no fucking even starts. You start with a loadout that you make, that you can put literally anything in there. There are no power-ups. There is regenerating health. You knuckle-dragging retard.
I would argue that Titans in Titanfall are more so an evolution of the arena shooter genre.
You see, you state this, but give no examples how.
What? Huh? Do you hear yourself? You're asking me to provide an example after I literally just provided an example of how Titanfall is putting its own spin on the arena shooter genre. Make it make sense, Krilix.
And if I remember correctly, you haven't played the fucking game, so how the fuck are you supposed to know if it's an arena shooter or not?
I mean, just because I never played it doesn't mean I know nothing about it. Also, I played the first Titanfall game, so cool, I guess.
Because clearly you have not looked into the game very deeply whatsoever if you're trying to claim Titans are an evolution of an arena shooter.
Okay then, Krilix, how about you go ahead and explain to me how Titans are not a spin on the arena shooter genre? Go ahead, I'll wait. It's more proof that arena shooters are evolving, especially Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is extremely fast, which a lot of arena shooters are known for.
Just because a game is fast-paced does not make it an arena shooter, dipshit.
Has your mind ever grasped the very concept of certain games having similarities to another genre? Probably not, but go ahead and point to me where exactly in that clip did I say that just because a game is super fast that makes it an arena shooter? Here's a hint, I never did. I said that Titanfall 2 has the arena shooter quality of being super fast paced. Not that it's super fast paced, therefore it's an arena shooter. Keep up those strawmans, Krilix. I just love to dissect them and proceed to make you look even more stupid every time you do it. And I would argue that Titanfall, like Titans, are just another example of an evolution of the genre.
Once again, you state that, but give no fucking examples whatsoever. What about calling in a Titan that you made a loadout for? Screams arena shooter to you.
You're seriously not gonna sit here and argue that Titans in Titanfall don't count as an evolution of the arena shooter genre, when you're the same retard that thinks Halo 5 was the last competent arena shooter. The same Halo game that introduced rec packs. Literal fucking pay-to-win garbage. Also, by your own logic, I guess none of the Halo games are arena shooters either because they contain vehicles. Go tell that to Unreal Tournament 2004, why don't you? And also by your own logic as well, Halo 4 is not an arena shooter because it introduced ordnance drops. You really need to make up your mind on what counts as an arena shooter or not. Sure, it may not be a straight up arena shooter, but it has arena shooter DNA within it, kinda like Halo does.
Halo and Titanfall are not comparable whatsoever, no matter how hard you're trying to reach. How on earth did you say this without realizing you look like a fucking dumbass?
I am not comparing the gameplay of Halo to Titanfall. I am comparing Titanfall to the arena shooter genre due to some aspects of the game's mechanics that can be compared to such, and I am listing off Halo as an example to prove my point. Nowhere in that clip did I compare the two games exclusively to each other. I remember you saying multiplayer defines it as an arena shooter? Are you sure that should define it? Because I disagree. Why do you disagree with that?
I swear, you are looking for any reason to claim that arena shooters are not dead in the multiplayer side of things. You have such a loose definition of an arena shooter. You can count any multiplayer shooter as an arena shooter. It means games like Fortnite, games like Call of Duty, games like Battlefield, games like Titanfall. All of those are apparently arena shooters according to you.
Bro, chill out. I asked a question, but that's besides the point. This is probably the most obvious straw man ever made in this entire video, and that is because he is taking a genuine question that I asked to somebody in my live stream's chat and twisting it to say that I think the only thing you need in order to consider a shooter game as an arena shooter is to have multiplayer. If me asking for someone to clarify on why they don't think having a multiplayer aspect should be one of the reasons to classify a game as an arena shooter is enough for you to try and twist what I'm saying, then that tells me everything that I need to know about you. And what do I mean by that? Well, put simply, any chance of me respecting you in any timeline is officially impossible, and any credibility you once had was tossed into the void. Go fuck yourself, you piece of human garbage. According to like FPS experts, an arena shooter is defined as like a multiplayer only like game that takes place in arenas.
And those supposed FPS experts are fucking stupid.
Look at this list and tell me that again. Go ahead, you won't. It's also funny that you'll shrug off FPS experts as stupid when you're also going with the narrative that I'm basing off arena shooters as any shooter out there that has multiplayer, which gives the implication that you think those FPS experts are claiming the same thing, which by itself makes you look even more disingenuous. Because then all the single player arena shooters aren't arena shooters, then yeah, multiplayer arena shooters are most certainly dying. Maybe. I kind of want to just point this out for the sake of it, but since this is on a live stream, of course my arguments are not going to be as ironclad as they would be in a video like this. However, my point still stands, and you would know my point if you just let the video play instead of being a douchebag. I don't think they're dying more so than a lot of different genres of games are just taking the spotlight.
How you have not overdosed with the amount of copium you are injecting into your veins right now is fucking beyond me.
What copium? I'm not the one that refuses to touch good games like Proteus and Dusk. It is you who is coping. Because clearly the arena shooter genre has an audience still. Like the fact that Actman made this video to begin with and people, like several people took issue with it. Like a lot of people took issue with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. There was a huge discourse around it. Several people made response videos on it. Lots of people took issue with it on Twitter, like I mentioned in my video on Actman. G-Man Lives got involved into criticizing his video, and Actman started seething over it. But no, my argument is completely invalid because he has a mostly positive ratio. You most certainly are one of those people that just blindly agree with the Actman because, you know, he's the Actman. Oh, and if you want to bring up ratios, then let's take a look at your ratio for your response to me. Let me just take a look real quick. Oh! Oof, yeah. You might want to check out yourself there, buddy.
This dude is literally taking a page out of Quantum TV's book, which, you know, that's never really a good sign of a mentally stable individual.
You deserve an Olympic gold medal for the amount of mental fucking gymnastics you're pulling here. How is he at all pulling a page out of Quantum TV's book?
Maybe let the video play, and he'll explain.
You see, I don't know if you're legally blind, but if you looked at where you paused, it's playing the video clip, dumbass.
I swear to God, this video deserves a foot-in-mouth award for the amount of mental gymnastics this guy pulls. Listen very closely, Krilix. You cut him off before he was going to explain his point on why Actman pulled a page out of Quantum TV's book. That's what you did, and you are deflecting that point. How you do not see that is beyond me.
But right here, he's expressing the same attitude that Quantum TV had towards Elden Ring.
No, Quantum TV said that a game that isn't made for everyone shouldn't be made at all. What Actman is saying is that the game isn't that accessible to newer players because of the amount of skill gap that there is between the low skill player and the high skill player.
And what does that say about Elden Ring then?
Elden Ring is a primarily single player game.
It also has PvP. What, are you gonna ignore that and say it's dead and irrelevant? I wouldn't be surprised if you tried to claim such.
Yeah, you can go up against other players in PvP, but most normal people...
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. If the only argument you can come up with in order to call something dead or irrelevant is that quote-unquote normal people don't do that, then you're fucking retarded and you need to get some perspective. I don't know what you mean by quote-unquote normal people, and frankly, I don't care. That does not change the fact that the thing you are disregarding right now because normal people do something else entirely, it still has a fucking audience. Regardless on how much you want to ignore and deflect that, you should probably step outside of your echo chamber and do some research. Because remember, Actman defended Elden Ring for not being accessible to new players. So that argument falls flat on its face.
Does it really though? Because what I just said is factually true. Games that have a high skill gap tend to not get very many new players into their game.
Are you seriously gonna sit there and say that and try to apply this logic to fucking Elden Ring and Souls games? I can't wait for the entire Souls community to take the piss out of that statement of yours. Let's go ahead and use the source that you just love to use in order to classify something as dead or not. Elden Ring's all-time peak on Steam was almost 1 million players, and thousands of people are still playing it to this day. Dark Souls 3's all-time peak was 130,000 players, and thousands are still playing that as well. And here's the thing, that's not even taking into consideration on how many people are playing these games on console. Let's go ahead and bring up some more. Sekiro's all-time peak was over 124,000 players. The same applies here. Thousands of people are still playing it. I don't know if this source is entirely accurate when it comes to its daily players, but Bloodborne's estimated total players was fucking 18 million. You cannot sit here and tell me that Souls games struggle to gain lots of new players because of its high skill gap, when that high skill gap is the very reason why Souls games got so popular to begin with. You are so incredibly oblivious and moronic if you think that is the case here.
Versus games with a low skill gap like Call of Duty. There's a reason Call of Duty is so popular.
And Elden Ring isn't popular? What the fuck is your point here? Just because a game is hard to understand, that doesn't mean the game won't become popular. If that were the case, then why would people still be playing through Doom Eternal's Ultra Nightmare mode to this day? If that were the case, then why would people be playing roguelikes like Risk of Rain 2, Dead Cells, Vampire Survivors, or Deadlink? You make no sense, my guy.
Not to mention, part of the fun from Elden Ring comes from the trial and error of learning a boss's attacks and figuring out how best to beat it.
We can apply that same logic to arena shooters as well. Remember earlier you stated that Doom and Quake force you to make decisions. You're trying to figure out how to get the most kills in a short time span, especially when it comes to using your arsenal at its peak. Plus, doing shit like that is way easier to execute than trying to figure out how to beat a boss in Elden Ring. Again, it really does feel like you're making excuses for the Actman here.
Dying to a boss in Elden Ring and going to your last save point is completely different than being absolutely obliterated by a player with thousands of hours, losing your entire weapon inventory.
You know, for a self-proclaimed arena shooter fan, you sound like you really suck at him if you agree with the Actman there. I most likely beat your ass back when I still played Doom 2016's multiplayer. Besides having a skill issue though, tell me how is it different? Both of those situations involve trial and error. You need to come up with tactics in order to make it easier, so where do the differences lie there? Also, boo-hoo, you lost your inventory. It's not that difficult to regain a good inventory again, especially in traditional arena shooters like Quake.
Not just arena shooters, like in Halo Infinite, I've seen many people in the community bitch about how the Mangler is too overpowered, or in the more recent Call of Duty games, people complaining about slide canceling or some other shit. Wherever there's an online multiplayer game and an online community of people around that game, there's gonna be those kinds of people that are just gonna bitch about the game being unbalanced or whatever.
No, a game being unbalanced is completely different from a game having a high skill ceiling. It doesn't take any skill to shoot someone with a mangler then melee them. It doesn't take any skill to double tap B to slide cancel. It does take actual skill to properly rocket jump and B-hop around the map.
You might be thinking, well, Actman company...
But according to Actman and a bunch of people, apparently, that's gatekeeping.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
Krilix, the fact you never watched the Actman's full video is becoming very blatant right now. You are asking me for a source on something that the Actman has literally stated himself in his own video. Maybe if you got off your high horse and did some fucking research, you would have already had your precious little source by now. But since you are way too incompetent to even try and get the full context, I'll go ahead and fetch you that source. Jimmy, roll the clip.
So what happened to arena shooters? Gatekeeping happened. Quakers want you to follow jank written guides on how to perform basic movement because things like bunny hopping and rocket jumping aren't explained in the games, and never had intuitive control systems implemented that made those actions easier. Shooting at a blur darting across a CRT monitor with a ball mouse while compensating for 200 millisecond lag isn't very engaging for hours either. And by the time technology caught up with the genre, tastes in multiplayer had long changed.
There's your source. Now you know more context, which you should have had to begin with, but it's already been established that you don't do proper research. Oh, and let's go ahead and add a little bit of extra irony to this. Hey Krilix, go ahead and read this for me. Now I bet you feel pretty stupid asking for a source.
How are we supposed to play it for something else when there's no other fucking option? If it's only single player, there's no option to play multiplayer. I would love nothing more than to play Doom Eternal's combat in a deathmatch setting. But guess what? That doesn't fucking exist because they're single player only.
Doom
Battle mode
2016?
doesn't fucking count.
All the franchises...
Why doesn't battle mode... Why does battle mode not count?
You literally tried claiming that I don't listen earlier in the video, and you're gonna try saying that? I literally said I would like to play Doom Eternal's combat loop in a deathmatch setting.
Someone in your comments under this video pointed out a mod called Doom Eternal Deathmatch, so if you want to play Doom Eternal in a deathmatch setting, go ahead and install that mod. Oh wait, you don't want to because you're not a real arena shooter fan like you love to claim.
Please tell me how battle mode is anything like a traditional arena shooter deathmatch.
You're actively dodging my question. I am asking you why does battle mode not count, and you're answering that with another question that you expect me to explain to you. So I'm gonna ask you again. Why does battle mode not count? I never said that it's a traditional arena shooter. I am simply asking a question here. Stop putting words in my mouth. Also, in context to what Thunderstruck said that Krilix is responding to, Thunderstruck made a mistake there saying that Proteus is single player only, when it does in fact have multiplayer. Which, by the way, I could almost compare that to Doom Eternal but in a deathmatch setting. So, wanna reconsider trying Proteus yet?
And with its sequel, Eternal, they ditched the entire concept of arena multiplayer entirely in favor of making this one mode that I played 3 times and never touched again.
But that's technically an arena shooter.
Dude, by your definition, almost every single shooter is an arena shooter.
Straw manning.
It's multiplayer, it takes place in an arena, and you fight people. It's a multiplayer arena.
Bro, you sound about as intelligent as Kamala Harris right now whenever she tries to make a speech.
And you sound like Mischief if he was 5 seconds away from shooting up a school. And it has its own spin on the genre, with it being round-based.
Hey, I don't mean to burst your bubble or anything, but there's been game modes that are round-based in shooter games for a very, very long time. Battle mode is not innovating because it has rounds.
Hey, dumbass, mind telling me where I even hinted at that? For fuck's sake. If you actually used your brain for a fucking moment, you would know that I am saying that Doom Eternal's battle mode is taking its own spin on the genre, and that I'm not saying that the game being round-based is what's so innovative about it. I am talking about what's within the round-based elements of battle mode that make it so innovative. I guarantee you that you know that that's what I'm talking about, but you just need to find any reason out there to bitch and moan.
See why I told y'all to remember that clip? Earlier he labeled Halo as not being an arena shooter, but now he's labeling Splitgate as being an arena shooter.
He never fucking said Halo wasn't an arena shooter. He was saying—
Yes, he did. Not outright, but he implied it because he's running with the narrative that people don't consider Halo an arena shooter. He's arguing in favor of those people saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter, so what's your fucking point?
Well, if you actually paid attention earlier in the video, which I assume you at least tried to, you would have seen that I stated the Actman is simply talking about people who primarily play Doom or Quake. Hey dumbass, you just fucking repeated what he was saying. You literally took what he said and just worded it differently. I know you yourself stated that you as a Doom and Quake player do believe Halo is an arena shooter, but once again, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Oh, so now you're gonna say Halo is an exception to the rule. God, this video's so fucking inconsistent.
Now, with that out of the way, you yourself admitted that the Actman never stated that Halo was nor wasn't an arena shooter. With that in mind, is it not therefore reasonable to believe that if he thinks Splitgate, which is just Halo with portals, is an arena shooter, that he believes that Halo is also an arena shooter?
Well, if you took your own advice and listened, you would also take into consideration that Actman was arguing in favor of those supposed Doom and Quake players saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter. Why would Actman run with that narrative if he thought the complete opposite? Oh, and let's not forget that Actman said this verbatim.
Fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Saying that other people who play Doom and Quake do not label it as an arena shooter.
I play Doom and Quake. Guess what? Halo's an arena shooter. And you also agreed with me that it is an arena shooter, so your argument still falls flat on its face.
Does it really though? Because we literally have an example of someone who plays arena shooters like Doom and Quake that specifically states Halo is not an arena shooter in your own chat. He just so happens to be the very same person that is in this video. The fact that you cannot comprehend that there are exceptions to generalization is fucking mind-boggling to me.
Alright, Krilix, so I heard you needed my input on why I think Halo isn't an arena shooter, so let me explain this to you. In general, I think the important qualities for an arena shooter, at least as far as the multiplayer goes, would be even spawns, an emphasis on collecting weapons and supplies on the battlefield, fast movement, the lack of a weapon limit, health not automatically regenerating, and, of course, taking place in arenas. Having said that, I'm not going to be so suffocatingly strict with my definition of arena shooter to count out something that satisfies most of these requirements. Like, say, if a game doesn't really have fast movement but is able to satisfy every other quality of being an arena shooter, then I'm not going to arbitrarily discount it from being an arena shooter. The thing with Halo, however, is that it doesn't satisfy at least half of these. Yes, it has an emphasis on collecting things on the battlefield, and with the exception of Halo Reach and Halo 4, you do have the even spawns. Only reason why Reach and 4 don't have them are obviously because they have loadouts. But it doesn't really satisfy the rest of them. Okay, maybe I guess it kinda satisfies taking place in an arenas, considering that a lot of the maps in Halo can be considered arenas. Although, at the same time, you have shit like Blood Gulch, Sidewinder, Zanzibar, Boarding Action, Sand Trap, Spire, and most of the big team battle maps, if I'm being honest, which are extremely wide open, and I wouldn't really consider them to be smaller, enclosed arenas. However, my point being, I said earlier that I wouldn't discount a game from being an arena shooter if it satisfies most of the requirements that I listed earlier, but the thing about Halo is that it doesn't satisfy half of them. In Halo, movement is slow. You have a 2-weapon limit. Your shields regenerate in every title, as does your health in every title except for Combat Evolved and Reach. But even then, in Halo Reach, like I said earlier, it doesn't have the fucking even spawns because of the preset loadouts. That is why I don't consider Halo an arena shooter. However, Brother Near 2.0 says it is. And while I don't necessarily agree with him on that, I can definitely see where he's coming from. Because the qualities of an arena shooter that Halo satisfies are what I consider to be the most important qualities. Those being even spawns, collecting weapons on the battlefield, and taking place in arenas. At least outside of the big team battle maps. Since Halo does satisfy those qualities, which I personally consider to be the most important aspects of an arena shooter, that's why I can agree to disagree with Brother Near 2.0 on this. Because he does make pretty valid arguments in favor of it being an arena shooter, even if I don't personally agree with one. And see, that's the whole thing, this whole concept of being able to agree to disagree. Because the thing is, at that point, we'd just be arguing over semantics. Ultimately, how many of these qualities do you have to satisfy for it to be an arena shooter? That answer is going to differ from person to person. Which is why I didn't really debate you on it in my response video to you. Even though I did mention that you thought Halo was an arena shooter, the reason I didn't pursue that in my response is because I can see the arguments for it being an arena shooter even if I don't necessarily agree. And is why I instead focus on if Actman said it was an arena shooter or not. Alright, I think I've said enough about this at this point, so yeah, I'm just gonna let the femboy continue to tear you a new one.
By the time the Xbox One and PS4 generations launched, arena shooters had all but fallen out of memory, and any new attempts at reviving the genre hardly made a splash.
Oh, you know, besides Wolfenstein the New Rodius, Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus, Ultra Doom 2016, Doom Eternal.
I wonder how many fucking times I'm gonna have to say this, but he's talking about multiplayer dipshit, not to mention, half of those games you just mentioned, either no one's ever heard.
So if the main narrative that Actman's going for is the multiplayer side of this genre, then why does he conveniently like to cherry pick whether or not single player matters in this context or not? especially when bringing up games like GoldenEye.
Well, Near, if you actually paid attention to the video like you claimed to, he's talking about the game that made shooters as a whole more popular on console. You know, it is possible to talk about two different conversations and have both of them be different contexts.
Oh really now? Cause if I recall, Actman claimed numerous times throughout his video that games like GoldenEye were posing a threat to the arena shooter genre. Oh, and nice job cutting out a section of my stream where I gave the other example of Half-Life. You really are a disingenuous fuck.
Of them, or they're only on fucking PC. Holy shit, this video was a fucking pain to get through. The amount of mental midgetry going on was literally killing me.
Is this uploader on his period? Okay, I'm pinning that.
Oh, dude, that forced laughter's so fucking cringe. Please don't ever do that again.
Okay, two can play at that game. You are obviously mad this entire video. No matter how many times you want to claim that hurling insults at me like that is just a funny bit. That's just the reality you found yourself in. But with that, we have finally come to the end of this god-awful video. I feel like I've acquired every mental illness in the book just by witnessing this guy spurg over my stream and strawman almost everything I say. Like, holy shit, this video is so bad. Let it sink in that someone gave birth to this man, by the way, because we unfortunately live in the wrong timeline since this very video exists. And considering that Thunderstruck got his response to Krilix out there, and that his video is getting bombed with dislikes as well as comments criticizing him, yeah, you brought this on yourself, buddy. In one of the most ironic fashions, you pulled the same shit that the old me did in that Griffin drama that you felt like bringing up. You hastily jumped into conclusions and argued in bad faith. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. This is the irony that combats that of Shakespeare. And with that, all I have to say is, you lost, bud. There's no denying that. With that being said, thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe, cause I need clout.